the nuclear industry. We've got a nuclear plant here. If they're using GE parts, how do you get them if they're not in business
it's the
anymore?
same thing with, it's the same thing as, General Motors and Oldsmobile. They discontinued the line, but nonetheless, they still have a backlog and probably warehouses full of what would be the essential parts. Maybe, and frankly, it's, most General Motors use the same fan belt and the same, water pump and et cetera for the engines. I don't know where you would find a right front quarter panel to replace if your car has an accident, but, I'm assuming that there'll be stuff like that. I mean, I had a 1988 BMW M6 that was imported from Germany. It was what they refer to as a Euro car. It was built there, it was used there, then it was shipped here. And the M series is their top of the line and kind of racing and etc. I hit the front valance on a curb, and they actually had to send out to Germany for another valance, and they told me there are only 2 of them left.
Oh, God.
So you better be careful for that one.
Oh, no.
But, but literally that's what they do, and that's what they'll do with these parts. And, in today's world with, this is taking it somewhat to the extreme, but in today's world with 3D printing, you can make anything. I mean, 3 years ago when 3D printing was, all the rage, they sent a 3D printer up to the space station so that if they had a problem, they could generate a part. The biggest use for those today, by the way, are in dental offices, where they will make a crown while you wait.
Are you kidding?
Or they'll take the measurement for a tooth that has to come out, that's going to need an implant, and produce it on site.
Wow.
So it's not, they make it's not like they make a temporary and you have to wear that for 10 days and, then you come back and they fit the crown onto, what they, that's, there are a lot of uses for that kind of stuff. And so I would assume that would be an answer for that.
So, Charles, are any of those companies that make the 3D printers, are any of those companies public? They're
all public.
They're all public. That would be a hell of an investment.
There's DDD, which is 3D Systems, sells for about $16. And I'll give you a brief rundown about historically what has happened. They became all the rage in late 2009, and the adjusted low because of stock splits on 3D is $1.25. They split it 2 for 1 in 2011. They split it 3 for 2 in 2013. It peaked in the beginning of 2014 at $97.28, and then spent the next 2 years retracing the move down to a low of $6.
Wow.
I'm glad you brought this up because it jibes perfectly with a conversation that I wanted to have today. These companies, with all of their promise, become the darlings of Wall Street. The same way that SunPower and the company that Elon Musk owns, and those happened around solar energy. And frankly, the best example that I can give is right now for the recent move in the cannabis stocks, because it's a new business and everybody sees the potential for it. You know, a lot of these cannabis stocks, the potential for it is in other countries other than Canada. Canada and I think Finland are the only two countries that have made it legal across all borders. Here in the U.S., we have a couple of states, like Colorado, who have use for recreational as opposed to the other uses that are in a lot of other states, which is medicinal. And so they were all the rage, and right now, over the last 2.5 or 3 weeks, they have absolutely collapsed. Now, CGC, a company called Canopy Growth, in the middle of 2015 was a $1 stock. In 2016, it moved up as high as, $14, and then consolidated for almost the whole year. And from 2017, it went from $3.83. It peaked at $59.25 in the beginning of this month, and currently has come all the way back to $30. And the issues here, well, and I mentioned Canopy Growth because they are the ones that Constellation Brands invested $4 billion in, because they see that as, you know, a tremendous potential market for them, because they take the oil out of and the THC out of the actual plant, and they produce what are called edibles, you know, like gummy bears and stuff like that. And so that's one of the delivery systems. There's a company called Tilray, which is the poster child for extreme moves. It's only been public since July. It came in July at $20. The low trade was $20.10, and the high trade that day was $24. We get to the 1st of September, and the stock is $69.
Whoa!
And yeah, and then we move to the middle of September, and the stock is $300.
Hey, so the stock is as high as the people taking it. Oh no!
Pretty much. and right now it's selling for roughly $90, $93, up $2 and change.
Wow.
But it came down from $300, and this is very common amongst individual groups that show this kind of potential. And of course, everybody and their brother runs in, and it tops out, and there's nobody left to buy it, really. And it continues to come back down and will sit. Now, I wrote a piece for our weekly strategies letter, and we may have a couple of copies of that left, on the idea of how overblown this happens. And in fact, I used specifically the 3D printing group, where, you know, it comes back down, and then all of the selling has to occur. Everybody has to get out, kind of, and the stocks go back into stronger hands and consolidate, and then they have another run based on the reality of how many countries there are and which companies actually make money. There was a large move in some of these stocks to, you know, do like Tilray is doing, announced at 150, down from 300, they announced that they were going to do a secondary to raise money. And of course, clearly, that's appropriate. But there are companies that I wrote about called Riot Blockchain who changed their name to add blockchain the same way that a guy with 6 drive-through car washes became public and then added .com to their name when, the .com phase was there. It's basically the same thing. And so now they'll have a shakeout of all of the BS companies. Notice what I did there. Didn't get nasty. Didn't have to bleep me. Most of these companies will fall by the wayside, and there'll be a consolidation of the survivors and the companies that actually do business and can actually make money doing it. And so, we'll have the same thing with cannabis that we had with .com, and the same thing that, we've had on these group moves of new technologies. And they'll just become another interesting group within the marketplace.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, that's something.
And, and it happens on a pretty regular basis. I mean, everybody was afraid if you recall that a lot of these companies that became public and had these big runs kind of fell by the wayside. I mean, there's a place not very far from me, a steak restaurant called Stockholders. And the pictures in Stockholders on the walls are, it's a very interesting company, and a very interesting restaurant, where they have a portrait of Ponzi, and they also have framed versions of the offering for, WebMD, or not WebMD because that one survived, but there was another, PetMD, where
Sure.
all of these companies just tried to become public. And, what happens is that the expectation and the markup goes pretty much as far as it'll go, and then it consolidates. And so, there's still a bunch of, there's, like I said, WebMD, which was successful, and all of these other companies. But what happens is the potential is there, and after the potential is there, then they actually start to make money, and it's no longer conceptual. And now, because they're making money, the reality hits that this is all the money that they're going to be able to make. So the idea was great, but the execution and the business plan maybe not so great because, now they get judged with a market PE. So a company that had great potential that sold for 50 or 100 times earnings, all of a sudden has earnings, and they mark it down.
Sure.
Not up.
Wow. Amazing.
By the way, before we have the guest, I just want to make mention of one thing. On the retail side, Under Armour, which has been talked down to death, had earnings this morning, and they handily beat the street big time, and the stock is trading 22.5, up 4.5.
Interesting.
Oh.
Well, they tried to make a play here at IRSC, but the school stayed with Nike, I guess, who supplies all of our gear, all the uniforms. So kind of interesting. Those two are really going at it at the major college level. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, is our guest on board here?
Well, stay on, Charles. I want you to meet Robert Polsey.
Yeah, hi, we're here.
Okay, good. Robert, with AIVN, tell us, what's your company all about?
Yeah, Mike Muncie's also with us today. He's the Chief Technical Officer. Hey, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about you. Tell us
Yeah.
what's AIVN all about?
Well, basically, AIVN started out as a gold mining company way back when, and we have a gold concession in Baja California, Mexico, which we're in the process of proving up the gold reserves on a 43101 report. And we've taken the company in a new direction. Basically, we are...
You want to hear about the company, or you want to watch that?
Okay, I don't know
Yeah,
who that voice is, but we
That's Jack.
we got a show going here.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Hello?
guys. There was a voice that came in there and shouldn't have been there.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think that was Jack Wygenti. I don't know how I heard
Yes.
Jack's voice. But
Yes,
anyway,
Jack is.
So we're taking the company we're diversifying the company, and we've taken it in a related direction. We're historically a coal processing company, and we've done work in Asia for the past 25 years. So we're in the process of building coal to liquids facilities in Indonesia. So that's the direction that the company is going to be taking over the next probably 10 years. So that's what we are today.
Well, tell us about your find in Baja. I know it pretty well. Where are you talking about this mine?
Can you repeat that again? I didn't hear the question.
Okay.
Where are you in Baja?
Where in Baja?
It's called the El Alamo mine. It's in Baja, California, and we're in the process of putting together a drilling program to prove the resource under a 43101. Everything else is available in public. You can check all the recent filings for the information.
Okay, tell us what's your stock symbol?
AIVN.
Oh, that's easy. Okay, and
Yeah.
are you guys on the OTC or NASDAQ, or where are you?
Yeah, it's traded on the OTC Pinks.
Okay, interesting. So, and tell us a
So
little
the
bit.
company's going in. Basically, we're going in not a new direction, but another direction. We're just diversifying to get more market play. I mean, it's where our expertise lies. Myself, I've worked and done business in Asia since 1989. We've been involved in different minerals and mining applications over the past 25 years, mostly in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. Now we're concentrating in that market, in the Indonesian market. We have technical processes that we can process coal and turn it into a synthetic crude oil, which greatly enhances the value of a concession, of a coal concession. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with those kind of processes, but that's what we do. So, say for instance, we have a concession that has 100 million tons of coal on it. Okay, so that coal today is not worth a lot of money because it's wet and it's dirty. But our processes, we can transform that coal into a synthetic, very clean synthetic crude oil, and we can get 4 barrels of crude oil per ton of coal. So that concession from 100 million tons turns into a 400 million ton reserve of in-ground synthetic crude oil. So it's a real value added for the product. So it's pretty interesting, and we have a lot of coal under our control in Indonesia.
So if you have 2
Close to 1
decades,
billion tons.
yeah, you've had 2 decades of experience in Indonesia. how does the government over there view you guys?
Well, the government basically, the government wants onshore processing of their resources. Until now they've been taking all their resources and shipping to either India or mostly China or steam coal. So they're shipping away their natural resources. So they want onshore processing. So they love us, basically. They want us there. They want us to build. There is not as much regulation in Indonesia as there is in the United States. So it's easier for us to develop there. We're hoping that the new administration here gives us a push, gives us a push forward and gives us a leg up. But honestly, we haven't seen that yet, so we're waiting. We're waiting for our president to give us a hand, as they promised.
Yeah.
So if he's listening, please come on down to West Virginia and see our process and save those coal jobs like you promised.
Well, and that's very interesting. Neil Cavuto last night apparently leveled Trump on the air and said, hey, Washington is now your swamp. So, he can't blame anybody else now. It's his baby. But so you guys are also involved in the West Virginia coal as well then, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's where we initially started.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah. That's where we initially started. That's where this process was formulated. It began at the WVU, at the coal labs at West Virginia.
West
University.
Virginia U, yeah.
Yeah. So I think maybe Mike, our chief technology officer, can speak to that right now because he had a hand in it. He's a mining engineer and low-class genius, basically. So he can explain it to you. So go ahead, Mike.
Well, coal to liquids is not as complicated as some may think. Of course, it depends on the coal itself. What we look for is the hydrogen to carbon ratio, and if you add hydrogen molecules to a solid coal, then it's relatively easy to keep it in suspension as a liquid. And the liquid constituents become very similar to coal tar pitch and or wind up being an oil-based, like a crude oil material that actually we can substitute bunker fuel for ships at sea, and this is low sulfur. By the time we process it, it's a low sulfur constituent. So that is one of the products that we make that we can make from coal, and it's a relatively efficient process. The data for years, and including the coal, all the coal states in the United States, all the states that produce coal are in a consortium, in a legal kind of consortium, and they come up with very similar data to what we have. And there are several ways to process coal. I mean, it's dependent largely on temperature and pressure, and you have to put it through a reactor type situation where you control actually cracking the coal into a liquid. If a Martian landed on the planet and kicked a piece of coal as he was walking over the surface, he would pick it up and look at it and say, liquid oil or solid oil, because coal has very similar constituents to oil. It's just solid, and so we have multiple processes available. We picked up a technology that we own the gasifier, the patent for the gasifier, and we have the the ability to gasify coal and or turn it into liquids. And that's I've been in the mining industry since 1976. I'm probably retirement age, but I don't ever expect to retire. They'll probably find me dead at the switch sometime. But I enjoy what I do with coal and promoting these processes, and have been solid in the mining industry all my working career. I worked at Coalwood, West Virginia, for Homer Hickam, Sr. And if anybody remembers remembers the movie Rocket Boys, that Homer was one of the stars in the movie. But I worked for Homer Sr. at Olga, and I've been in the mining industry all my career. So I'm very much in the mindset to promote coal and coal jobs.
Mike, is this
we do.
Is your process now? Can this all be exported to, say, the European nations, or is it already being exported? I mean, this sounds amazing.
So it absolutely can be exported to anywhere on the face of the earth that has the proper coal to turn into oil. I mean, we can do it anywhere.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So the opportunity is pretty rarefied. It's pretty interesting for this company. I mean, it's the direction that we're going.
Boy.
And, I don't think there's another company like us that has the experience and the boots on the ground in foreign countries that we have. So I think we're pointed in the right direction. I think it's going to be an interesting next few years for AIVN for sure.
What are the reserves like?
The reserves of coal under our control and our strategic business partners' control is over a billion tons. That means that we have in our control 4 billion barrels of synthetic crude oil when you pair it with our technology. Now we're in the process now of doing some underwriting work on it. You know, it just doesn't happen overnight. We have to raise basically every plant costs around $350 million to build. So we have a plan to build 4 plants in Indonesia on these concessions. So basically, we do a financing method of we take the in-ground asset, the reserve, we take the technology, pair it together. We do a drilling program. We get what they call in Indonesia or in the Australian area called a JORC or a JORC report. It's the same as a 43101. We get that and we use that as collateral basically for a bond. So we do a bond underwriting, which is generally rated by Fitch, which you're probably familiar with Fitch, the underwriting agency. And then we underwrite it to finance the project. So we're in that process right now. So we're doing that right now.
From this is monthly. From a standpoint of earth changing or world changing involving the technology, Exxon values oil in place at about $6 a barrel. That's crude oil if they've got a lease, and their petroleum engineers do a calculation on the trap and they try to determine what's downhole based on seismic and other testing. They value the oil in place at about $6, a little less than $6 a barrel. We did a process, or we did an application with the Securities and Exchange Commission on a coal lease, and we were able to value the coal in place previously in the United States at 48 cents a ton. Now, that Robert had earlier alluded to low value, the low value of coal. But if you have a process by which you can take the low valued coal and turn it into liquids that are usable as motor fuels, and you can even create diethyl methyl ester, which is a precursor for plastics, and anything that you can make from crude oil, we can extract from coal. As a matter of fact, Koppers Corporation in the 50s did a publication that there are 44,000 products that can be extracted from coal. So, in a white paper that I published in 2011, my thesis statement was it's simply wrong-headed to burn coal in a steam-fired power plant when you can extract 44,000 valuable products from coal and still make electricity with the residual heat. So my point there is that as if we turn coal into liquids, I'm not going to predict what the value would be, but certainly it's somewhere between 48 cents and $6, which is something that I feel excited about and is earth changing, and how we view coal.
Wow, this is amazing. Now, you talk about synthetic. I hate to be so simplistic, but as a consumer, I use synthetic oil in my car. So could something like this be used for that?
Well, of course. Synthetic only refers to the fact that you've taken, the root word is synthesis. If you gasify coal, oil, any hydrocarbon string, you can even utilize municipal solid waste, and I don't even want to go there because that's an entirely different science. But anything that you could burn in a 55-gallon drum in your backyard, and that includes mashed potatoes, chicken bones, and baby diapers, you can extract the hydrogen and carbon from it, and actually make a liquid fuel. And I've done quite a bit of research on municipal solid waste as well. Municipal solid waste, the problem with MSW is it's non-homogeneous. You never know what you're getting, how much plastic's in it, how much mashed potatoes is in it. So it's very difficult to run through a gasifier. Although Utah-Shinai, Japan, had a gasification process that they made electricity from municipal solid waste and auto shredder residue. And auto shredder residue being the bumpers and the plastic seat covers and the styrofoam and rubber seats that help stabilize the throughput, the material coming in as a feedstock. But anything that's a hydrocarbon, you can actually turn into synthesis gas and reconstitute it into a liquid, being your synthetic oil.
Sure. Well, what you're saying though, it makes a lot of sense that coal-fired power plants are really wasting the coal as an asset by burning it off. Then, right?
Yes, I mean it works as in a fire, but there's a much better and higher use for coal than burning it in a power plant.
So
to extract the products.
I would think environmentalists would love you guys because
They should, yeah.
This does a couple things.
We've never had any pushback. I've been working in this particular sector since 2007, and when you look at, sometimes I get a little terse. I'm an old curmudgeon, so I don't tolerate a whole lot of aggravation before I snap back. But from an environmental standpoint, you got to do something with it. You want to put it in a landfill, or do you want to reutilize the material? And that's a reference to municipal solid waste. On the other hand, do you want to have the best and highest use from coal? I certainly can show you economic models that show the value of utilizing coal to the best and highest use rather than just burn it in a stack.
So
I think, at this point we should probably talk about the mines that are closing in West Virginia right now. I mean, there's mines that are perfectly fine that are going to lay off how many?
400.
One mine, 400 people. Now, if we put our process to work at that mine, we save all those jobs, and then we create an onshore source of synthetic oil. So this is what we're trying to do with AIBN. These are the kind of things that we're. I mean, we need the help of the current administration now in this country to do this. I mean, we're welcome with open arms in other countries like Indonesia. We're welcome partners with the government there. We're welcome partners with all industry there. But in the United States, still yet, we haven't got to the point where, like you say, the environmentalists should love us, but we're not at that point yet in the United States. But we're trying to get there.
Well, Robert,
we're trying to create.
Okay, so how do
Is
you
that for a lack of?
How do you
is that
get
for
there?
a lack of funding to get the story out, or
No,
is there
it's
some
just
specific question?
Time. It's just time. Like I said, we've been working, I've worked in the Pacific Basin for the past, since, like I said, 1989, right? Well, I moved back to the United States 2 years ago to basically do this here, to promote it here also. So we're working hard to get the word out. We're working hard. Of course, everything needs money. Every company needs money to operate, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is awareness, I think, and we're trying to make Washington aware of our situation. And we have the answer. We have the answer, the industrial answer to all the mine closures in the United States, actually.
So do you have to build plants at the mines then to hopefully help save the mines?
They don't have to be at the mines. They can be near the mines.
Okay.
This may sound a little futuristic, but if we built a facility at a mine mouth on coal mine lands, we could actually take the coal from the mines, directly from the mines. There would not be any transportation issues. The pushback on coal is if you look at the structure of coal, it was formed by a sedimentary process, and you had vegetation growth, and sometimes you'd have floods and you'd get a lot of dirt and mixed in. So coal by structure, when you mine it, may or may not have large quantities of rock in it does not have a high hydrocarbon ratio, and they call that slate. And with the old process of float sink, they would actually put the coal in a big washing machine and add magnetite to it and change the specific gravity in this bath, and the rock would sink and the coal would float. And they would scrape the rock out of the bottom with bucket conveyors, and that rock would go out on a hillside someplace and be buried in a landfill. And that's been the environmental pushback. And no one can say with a straight face or in their right mind say that orange water coming out of a slate dump is good for the environment. I won't even allude to that. But in the process that we have, all of the material can go through a gasifier, and the rock can be separated and actually be, depending on the temperature, if you're using, depending on what you're using in the gasifier, the rock does not not have to be spoiled. It can find a better and higher use as roadbed material or aggregate, and is not and it also passes the sodium sulfate leachate test. So it does not leach anything into the environment once it's been processed with some of our processes. That we have multiple processes for coal gasification and coal to liquids, but in this country, the pushback was what to do with the rock, and that's what the previous administration hung its hat on with the water, with water pollution, and we can solve that issue with the gasifier.
So what has been the reaction of the current EPA and the Trump administration then?
Well, we've had very the modeling and the interaction that we've had with any administrator currently has been very positive. We have no negatives. It's just, we have a small bandwidth that we're running right at bandwidth on what we're capable of doing at the present size, and but we have no issues. I just think that we have no negative issues. We don't think there's enough being done, and how to solve that is we may come up with some solutions based on this conversation.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Charles, we've only got 3 minutes left. Tell us ask about the stock symbol and where the stock is right now.
Yep. Oh, AIVN.
And I think
And
we're
the
trading
stock
at 2.5
is
cents
current.
right now.
Say again?
2.5 cents, I believe. I'm not sure. I didn't look at it today yet. But, maybe we can continue this conversation at another time and make you understand more in depth of what we are doing, because there's a lot more of it.
Yeah. One of the issues with the stock, unfortunately, is the size of the spread. There's literally 100% between the bid and the asked, and there needs to be more liquidity, which kind of naturally comes from people seeing the story and becoming aware and being comfortable, and so that is one substantial issue. But it's very when you were talking about the mill, was that a ball mill?
I'm sorry?
The mill that you were talking about. What does it cost to build at the site?
Oh, the build, about $350 million, and we can build. We could actually build on a mine site, and you could actually wind up shipping out by wire. You could do electricity on. I've got a white paper. That talks about having a GE Jenbacher generator right on site, and kind of futuristic statement, but you can actually survive a nuclear winter because you got heat, electricity for lights, and you can grow food with the CO2 and reprocessing the CO2 and making utilizing the coal right on site.
Wow, what an amazing story. AIVN. Guys, what's your website? Is it AIVN.com?
.co.
AIVN.co. Okay. AIVN.co. What an amazing story. Wow. It could revolutionize the coal industry. That's very cool. You've been listening to Money Info, brought to you by Princeton Research, with Mike King in Las Vegas, Charles Moskowitz in Boston, and what a story. AIVN is the name of the company. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world, WPSL on Alexa, WPSL on Google Home. Hey Google, play WPSL.